Further debate? I recognize a member from Brampton Centre.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. It's always a pleasure to see you in the chair. It's a real honour to rise here today and contribute to the debate. I appreciate listening to members on both sides of the House. This has been a very interesting experience as we move forward with Bill 68. I think it's very interesting to me. I think I'd first like to just start off by thanking our frontline officers for the valuable work that they do in our communities across the province. I know for me, as someone who once thought about a career in policing, as I had shared at the Police Association of Ontario convention, I take great pride in the work that police officers do across our province, and I think that it's important that we acknowledge how they do essentially put their life on the line to respond to the calls that they go out to and to serve and to protect our community. I think that we can all agree that we do need to work on building those relationships between our communities and our police services a little bit more effectively, especially for those communities who have been over-policed and have dealt with the impacts of over-policing in their communities. While this bill is a step in the right direction, I think as we discussed in committee, there is still so much work that needs to be done to ensure that we are effectively restoring that trust and accountability within our police services and within the communities who are, frankly, receiving the service from those police. So much work to do, and so it was really interesting to me that we time allocated a very important bill that really, I think, needed very fulsome conversation and consultation and hearings during the committee process. But unfortunately, because we time allocated this bill, we only heard from a very limited number of people. But it was a really interesting experience because it was great to hear from officers, presidents of police associations, community members, lawyers who raised several concerns still with the bill. And, the NDP caucus here, we presented several pretty reasonable amendments to help strengthen this piece of legislation and ultimately achieve the goals that this government had outlined, which were to increase transparency and accountability. I think we all agree that there's no harm in developing well-being and diversity plans for our communities, but there are a lot of concerns raised by municipalities themselves who are worried about how they're going to meet the targets that this government has set out. I know my time is limited, so I'm going to try to address some of the concerns that were raised for us in committee. We heard from the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and they were very concerned that this government was imposing a one-size-fits-all mandate for all 444 municipalities here across our province, and that policing in, let's say, the region of Peel was going to look very different than if we were going to your riding, Mr. Speaker, because the communities were very different. Targets would be very different. They were very concerned with how they were going to meet the mandates of reflecting board diversity in communities where perhaps that diversity is just not present. It was concerning to them how they were going to meet the objectives that this government was putting in place. They were very optimistic because, again, I think we can all agree that we want to ensure that the police have the tools that they need to do their jobs effectively. That was one of the reasons that we put forward amendments to perhaps strengthen again what those training plans would look like. Perhaps align them with not only the ministry, but also perhaps the Anti-Racism Directorate as well, and consult with the Anti-Racism Directorate to ensure, again, that the diversity plans and consultations that these communities were going to engage in were going to be effective and actually support the communities that we needed to. We also asked that if we were going to develop all of this training and encourage police services to develop these well-being plans, well, why are there no outcome measures being put in place to ensure that the plans that are being developed, perhaps 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road, were meeting the goals that we wanted them to? Again, we put forward amendments for Schedule 1 and Section 3 to ensure that we strengthened how that training would be implemented here in the province, and again, to ensure that the police services had the tools to make sure that they were meeting the goals that this piece of legislation was going to address. But unfortunately, during that committee process, our amendments were shot down. Again, very reasonable amendments to strengthen legislation, not to be opposition just for opposition's sake, but to, again, bring something tangible to make something better. It was shocking to me that we couldn't find common ground in terms of understanding that we needed to make sure the police had all the tools at their disposal to do their jobs more effectively when they went into the community. I'm going to read to you, Mr. Speaker, another amendment that we put forward. And I move that in paragraph 3 of subsection 35 of section 2 of schedule 1 to the bill be amended by striking out and at the end of subparagraph 3I by adding the following subparagraphs. That in section 3, we included this very specific language: lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer, questioning, two-spirit people, and that in bullet number 4, we included very specific language again to ensure that people with mental health issues and developmental or other disabilities were also included in the type of training that the police officers would receive. Now, I know I sat in on many of the hearings with Justice Tullidge in our community, and when I sat in at those meetings, time and time again, people wanted to ensure that the police had the training to interact with our communities. So we suggested that in addition to outlining certain racialized groups that needed to be taken into consideration, that we take that a step further and we look at other vulnerable groups that perhaps the police would benefit from additional training and how they would interact with those groups. As I shared a couple of days ago, I actually have a younger sister with a developmental disability. As a tireless advocate for all folks with disabilities across this province, I sat as a board director on Community Living Ontario's board of directors for a number of years. And time again, we really struggled with the number of people with developmental disabilities who were having interactions with police, and it wasn't that the police didn't want to do their jobs, they just really truly did not understand the type of disability that they were dealing with when somebody came in with a language speech impediment, or if they came in with a lower cognitive rationalizing sort of perspective. They couldn't understand the situation that they were in, and either did the police. And so by putting forward these types of amendments, we were encouraging the government as well as the police services to receive additional training. And this wasn't just for the police. Actually, we suggested these amendments on several occasions throughout this legislation to ensure that everyone from frontline officers to the SIU director would receive this additional training when they would interact, again, with these vulnerable communities. But for whatever reasons, members of the government did not feel that these were good enough amendments and that we couldn't work together to ensure, again, that we strengthened this piece of legislation to ensure that the police and, again, all levels of law enforcement were receiving the type of training that they needed. Now, the final section that I'll perhaps discuss is Schedule 5, which deals with the Special Investigations Unit. There were several concerns raised about the direction that this piece of legislation was going to take us in, with respect to, again, restoring accountability and trust between communities and our police services. When I sat in and on many of those hearings in our communities, people were very concerned with making sure that the SIU and police functions as a whole were separate and very independent. They were concerned that retired police officers were being appointed to the board and sitting on these boards, and that there really wasn't enough representation from the community on these boards. To some degree or another, I can understand that, and I can agree that we need to have a ratio that is fair, that represents the community, but also ensures that police members are represented on that board. During our conversations, a suggestion actually came up that perhaps what we could do was train those SIU investigators. And so we put forward amendments again to ensure that they receive the additional training. So even if community members were appointed to that board, they would have the same level of training to be an investigator as anyone else that would have stepped onto that board. So again, allowing the community an opportunity to be a part of the solution and be a part of the conversation. As I wrap up here, I'm just going to read one little piece here from the written submission that was received from the SIU, who was very concerned with the direction in Section 15 with respect to the powers that are given to investigate. So they were very concerned, and I'm just going to read this. In the draft legislation, the SIU's statutory mandate is predicated on an incident that, quote unquote, may have resulted from criminal conduct by an official, unquote. Respectfully, this puts the cart before the horse and requires a determination on the outset of an investigation before any evidence has been gathered or information collected. So we put forward several amendments to help just clarify when the SIU's mandate would be invoked, again, to ensure that there was clarity not just for the community, but police officers themselves, for chiefs of police, as well as the SIU. Those amendments, Mr. Speaker, were also not accepted. So it's very unfortunate that here today, as we debate this very historic piece of legislation and we work towards, on both sides of the House, restoring trust and accountability, that this piece of legislation, when we had an opportunity to do the right thing and go far enough, we failed to do that. We failed to put in place the right balance between the community and the work that needs to be done. And so I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to rise here today.
Thank you very much. Further debate?